Hello, everybody. My name is Edith Bowman. I am the host of The Crown, the official podcast, which is one of my favourite jobs. And I'm giddy to be moderating the FYC virtual panel for the cast and creators of Netflix's critically acclaimed drama series, The Crown. Now, as you know, The Crown is an award-winning saga that gives the inside story of Queen Elizabeth II's reign and the struggle between her private and public self. Focused on the personal intrigues, romances, and the political rivalries that shaped the second half of the 20th century, not simply about the monarchy, but the dawn of a new era. I am thrilled to have with me creator and writer Peter Morgan, Olivia Colman, who plays Queen Elizabeth II, Tobias Menzies, who plays Prince Philip, Josh O'Connor, who plays Prince Charles, Gillian Anderson, who plays Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, and Emma Corrin, who plays Princess Diana. Welcome all. Hooray! Oh, it's lovely to see you all. Now, I have so many questions, and we've got some lovely kind of moments that we have a few clips that we're going to play as well. But Peter, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. Season 4 of The Crown showcases a new era for the monarchy, and the universe expands with the introduction of two iconic historical figures, female historical figures, Princess Diana and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Picks up in the early 80s. And how did you know what stories within that era that you wanted to include particularly?
Well, that's always the part of the process that takes longest, is when you know, and I knew coming into this that season 4 was going to span the period of time of Margaret Thatcher's reign as Prime Minister. So I knew it was going to go from 79 to 90. Some things obviously leap out, in that period of time. Charles and Diana get married. In that period of time, Mountbatten gets assassinated. In that period of time, we go to war in the Falklands. And then you start thinking about the characters and what happened perhaps to them privately. And then you start, just through the fantastic research team that I've got, you start uncovering certain magical other episodes, which I didn't know, and therefore I assume most other people don't know them at all, because this subject matter, we've been crawling all over it for a while. And so you get occasional episodes like the one about the cousins, the Queen's cousins, the hereditary principal one, where you come across and you think, I've just got to write that. And I knew the story about Michael Fagan breaking into the palace, and I think I pretty much always wanted to write that too. So bit by bit by bit, you come up and you have about 20 ideas, and then you just whittle them down until you're left with about 10.
And you mentioned your research team, headed, of course, by the fabulous Annie Salzberger, who I love talking to. And, that's such an important relationship between you and the research team, isn't it? In terms of you kind of throwing things at them, then they come back to you with suggestions or truths, or, with all the work that they've done.
Yeah, and that process, like I say, that process takes many months. The actual writing of the episodes, of course, you write them and rewrite them, but the figuring out of the season and making sure that, of course, once you've identified which stories you're interested in, some of which have been uncovered by research, some of which I've made up in my mind what it should be like, and then the research team generally tells me I'm wrong. But when you finally got them, you then also have to figure out, have I given enough space to each of the characters? Each of the characters, really, they're so, they're riveting, complex, individuals, and so you want to make sure they each have an appropriate moment in the spotlight too. And so then you have to start working out when that happens in the season and at what point that happens in the season. So as I say, that's probably 80% of the work is mapping out the season. And then once I've finally identified what each episode is going to do, the writing of it is relatively straightforward by comparison.
Talking about riveting characters, Diana and Charles we're going to talk about now, and from their courtship to the wedding broadcasts around the world to millions to see, viewers got a look within the show to the romance and the relationship between Prince Charles and Lady Di. Before we discuss this, I mean, it's gripping, it's heart-wrenching performance from you both. We're going to show a clip from episode 10, War, where Charles and Diana engage in a pretty intense argument over a trip that Diana has recently taken to New York. Let's take a look.
Who are you referring to?
Camilla.
Why would I care about her?
Because I care about her! Morning, noon, and night I care about her! And you hurt her. If you hurt her, you hurt me. Camilla is who I want. That is where my loyalties lie. That is who my priority is.
Not the mother of your children.
Don't bring the boys into this.
All right. Not the woman you married!
I refuse to be blamed any longer for this grotesque misalliance! I wash my hands of it!
Every time, I think I've seen that scene so many times, and every time I watch it, it brings me to kind of just tears. I can just feel the emotion. For you guys, it was lovely to watch your reactions, kind of slight fear and kind of, I don't know if I want to watch this or not in your eyes. I mean, Josh and Emma, congratulations on these performances in this season, because I mean, I don't know, I could spend hours talking to you about it, but that particular scene, what do you remember about filming that scene?
I remember it was one of the most difficult scenes we shot, because we took these characters to a place where we hadn't really taken them before, in terms of really expressing with like such ferocity their emotions, which they had kind of like skirted around before. And I remember just like being a bit like you, like so taken aback when like Josh went there in that way. I was like, oh my God. It was weird, because we shot that quite late on, and we were such good friends and so fond of each other, and it was very weird to suddenly have to really dig deep and like scream at each other.
It was strange because we had spent, as Emma says, like such a long time together and got very close and hopefully very kind to each other. And there Peter was being like, let rip, and deaths on the day. I remember we were so used to doing the sort of royal family thing of don't say what you really mean.
I wanted to ask how you found that balance between, I mean, that's a great example of being in the moment and not leaning into the kind of future tragedy of the relationship and of Diana that we already know. Did you almost have to kind of try and keep that out of your mind and sticking with where the relationship was and where they were at that time?
It's something we always had to kind of bear in mind, but it helped us to try and see the issues that they were dealing with and negotiating as just like quite normal ones, like two people working out a marriage. The writing in the series helps anyway, because you realize you're playing like characters, not so much the real people.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Peter, about writing that particular scene and how you find the right words and the energy and the pace as well to convey how fractured the marriage and the relationship truly was.
By the time it got to this point, like Emma was saying, this is, you know, they filmed this quite late on, and it's in the final episode, and so we've had sort of 9 or 10 episodes, well, nine episodes up until this point, where they've fallen in love and they you know, got married, and then the first cracks, and we've watched it disintegrate very, very slowly. And I was quite taken aback watching that scene again, because I haven't seen it for a while, and the temperature of it is, you know, it's big and vivid and furious. I think it helps to write that sort of stuff quite quickly, and so often a scene like that, a scene with real anger where you just let rip, I don't want to overthink it too much.
I'd love to talk about Margaret Thatcher, Gillian, if that's okay. Another new character. I'm saying new, but obviously the world knows Thatcher, and Britain's first female Prime Minister. And your performance is so transformative. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that evolution of her through the season, really, in terms of, you know, we see her not just as a leader. There are lots of different hats that we see her wear that we've never really seen before, and how much fun or how you played with that character and that journey over the 10 episodes of the season.
Well, so Thatcher shows up in 6 of the 10 episodes, and obviously the scripts themselves dictate that journey. It was quite evident, actually, in the research that I did, and this fantastic BBC documentary that happened to land at the period of time that at least I was in prep, etc., which really showed an aspect of her humanity that perhaps we haven't really seen before. And for an actor, that just makes it all the more interesting, compelling, joyful, challenging.
How would you describe her the difference in her from the start of the season to the end? Because I love even the physicality of the change of the character, in terms of how everything almost kind of weighs down on her, and it's you kind of can almost kind of see her sort of almost shrivel in a way as well by the end of the season.
It's interesting because actually by the end of her being in office, her singular mind and thinking and she was, I think by the end, pretty much just listening to herself and not necessarily that many of her advisors. So you would have thought by then she would actually be standing up straighter, but certainly at the very beginning, Thatcher's, and we see this in the series, Thatcher's, she's a monarchist. She grew up, as a royalist, and she had huge admiration for the institution. She's very energized, and even though she's still energized at the end, a lot of things happened during that period of time in history, and also a lot of opposition, and so you see that definitely weighing on her by the time she's ousted.
Yeah, in that car, kind of hiding in the back seat kind of thing. It's a really emotional performance. And you mentioned that relationship with the Queen, and one of the things that I think's fantastic about the Crown is with each season, this wonderful dance the Queen has with her prime ministers, almost in a way. And the Queen and Thatcher's relationship at best could be described as less cordial. Before we talk about your performances in that relationship, we're going to show a clip from episode 8 where Prime Minister has come to confront the Queen on speaking out against her in the press. Let's take a look.
Before coming today, I checked with a cabinet secretary, and it turns out that in the 7 years I have been Prime Minister, we have had 164 audiences, always the model of cordiality, productivity, and mutual respect. So it is perhaps not unreasonable to expect an isolated hiccup.
What hiccup?
I was under the impression that Her Majesty never expressed her political views in public.
I don't.
That there was an unbreakable code of silence between Sovereign and First Minister.
If you're referring to the Sunday Times, I've always advised my Prime Ministers against reading the newspapers.
I don't, ma'am.
They misunderstand, misquote, and misrepresent. Then everybody gets into a fluster.
But my press secretary does. And he has working relationships with all of the editors, and the editor, in this case, assured him that the sources were unimpeachable, close to the Queen, unprecedentedly close.
Well, I'm sure a clarification will soon be forthcoming. In the meantime, should we not make a start on the business of the week? Only I am mindful of the time.
This is the business, ma'am. The only business. I think we have enough respect for one another personally to ask ourselves some of the bigger questions. Woman to woman. We are the same age after all.
Really?
Just 6 months between us.
Oh? And who is the senior?
I am. Ma'am.
So good. That breath. I am. It's so brilliant. I'd love to have a kind of edited show of just those audiences with the two of you, because they're so brilliant to watch. What do you both remember about kind of those scenes and filming them? Because I know that they're so intense that we watch, but I know behind the scenes there's a lot of hilarity going on some of the time and quite a lot of the time. But but in terms of working together and getting the chance to play these, powerful, impressive women together and opposite each other. Is it fun? Is it what? How do you describe it?
It's so much fun. What I remember mainly about audience scenes is they're all filmed back to back in the hardest week of the season, because they're all very wordy, loads of words that Peter Morgan has written, and you film them all. You have sort of 5 solid days of words, and I kept saying, I don't mind going second, Gillian, so that I had a chance to try and learn it before. But apart from that,
Yes, I remember that too. Funny that. No, it was interesting because I was very nervous going into those scenes, and as Olivia says, you shoot them back to back, and sometimes you're shooting we shot episode 1 audiences back to back with episode 10 audiences, for instance, and you want obviously to have for the transition and the arc to be evident in everything, in just your very being, and so there's that pressure. But I assumed that they would just be the bit that everybody fast forwards through because I found them so hard, and I just assumed that I was boring. And so in the scenes, and it was actually such a shock to hear from people that those were some of their favorite scenes with the audience. I could not believe it.
That's crazy to think that you shot the first episode and the 10th episode back to back. I mean, to hold and convey that journey that goes on in between that, just purely by reading the scripts and knowing the character that you're playing, that's extraordinary to hear. Bravo, you deserve all the awards, all of them. Amazing. Peter, leading up to this season, you've written several prime ministers and their relationships with the Queen. And I know that you have a specific way that you like to relate the prime ministers to the Queen, and it's family. You think of them as a family member, don't you? Is that right?
It just helps when you think about the Queen that, for her, someone like Churchill would have been a grandfather prototype, and Eden and Macmillan would have been father prototypes. And Thatcher is a twin sister. They were born just 6 months apart, and that, so given that the Queen is having to negotiate all these sort of family type relationships with her, you can't help but respond to somebody in those ways. If they're the same age as you, you just do approach the relationship differently. Despite everything that was difficult between them, I do think the Queen had a lot of sympathy for Thatcher, the way that she was finally removed from office.
We're going to move on to the Queen and Prince Philip. I have loved this relationship, watching it over time, and with all the turmoil and the tension of the season. It's the one constant viewers can almost rely on between the two of them. The past 2 seasons, Olivia, you and Tobias have just the heart that it's brought to The Crown, and their kind of candor, their endearing relationship. It just looks that you both have a lot of fun with each other and kind of finding this energy that they have with each other. Is that fair to say?
No, you're wrong. It's a nightmare. It's really, really difficult.
Cheeky.
No, I guess, yeah, we built it up, didn't we? Olivia is amazing to work with. She'll be embarrassed for me to say this in front of her. I'm going to try and make her blush, but she's incredibly instinctive, an intuitive actor, and so. What was interesting is that we didn't really need to talk about it a huge amount. It sort of it built up. Mm-hmm. I guess it is in some way the heartbeat of the show, this relationship that sort of around which everything rotates. It's one of the constants. And it's sort of been interesting seeing the reaction to his death, because there's a lot, obviously a lot of talk about what that relationship was and what it's meant for as a nation, It was interesting to hear, how many people kind of, I don't know, relate to them, and obviously their kind of consistency over these years has meant a lot to a lot of people. What do you reckon, Collie?
Yes, I agree with you.
Yes.
Tobes and I started at the point where they'd settled into comfort, and they were sort of okay. They thought about where they were going to be, and they'd sort of met a truce. But then I think the love started to grow between them. Or that's what I feel between 4 and 5 for us, so that we were sure of each other and of what each other needed. And I do love the way I keep picturing Tobias, Philip, sort of dropping in something like the favourite child, or just being a little bit annoying and then walking out and just leaving it to unravel. And it was quite fun, and that naughty little smile. So sort of teasing each other, but there for each other and supporting.
Yeah, and that's what I think really comes across between their relationship in this season in particular. You kind of almost forget that they're royals. They're just this lovely married couple who, finish each other's sentences or take the mick out of each other or know things about each other that they don't even know about themselves. It's beautiful and wonderful to watch, really, really is. Let's talk about the Queen and Prince Charles, because season 3 and 4 has kind of shown the evolution of the relationship between mother and son, as well as the Queen, obviously in the future king, this whole idea of, duty versus family. I wanted to talk to you both about playing this relationship and the journey that it's had over the 2 years, and trying to find that right line of her maternal instinct and how much is there and how much can you show. And would you mind talking a little bit about that, Olivia?
We all come from a place where we're allowed to feel what we want to feel, be with who we want to be with, do the job we want to do. So it's very hard to play something where none of that is allowed. And I suppose, Joshy Pops, I just want him to be happy, and so it's awful watching anyone being unhappy. And why can't you just love each other? It does me fine. So it goes against the grain a bit for me, but also you see how this woman did it. This incredible woman. She's done it all her life. Oh, come on! This is what it's like. It's not, unfortunately, like everybody else's life. And she really, in our version, in our dramatic version, doesn't cope with his marriage and falling apart, I think, and that I found that all quite difficult. Although it's lovely to do a scene where you have a bit of a shout from an acting point of view.
Josh, this journey is with Charles over these two seasons. We've an extraordinary path that as an actor to have the opportunity to play a character over this length of time, and obviously play a character who has had such a journey, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and about looking back on it and what you sort of taken away from it, what you remember, what your sort of favorite memories of it, and also those moments with Olivia, with Mum.
It's been obviously been an amazing, the whole thing's been an incredible experience. But I think in a weird way that what I kind of hadn't counted for was how hard it would be to go from being like this very sort of people feeling very sorry for you, and then people absolutely hating me, like in the space of 2 years. And that was quite, I suppose that was quite tricky, I think, but really exciting. And I always felt the thing that really got me going on this job was the idea that I, in season 3, could try and make people feel sorry for this young boy and try and understand his love for Camilla, which obviously was made a lot easier working with Emerald, and then to introduce this idea that actually his relationship with Diana was really complex, and he did love her. And I think throughout that, and kind of, I always had that scene we showed earlier with Emma, I always had that in the back of my mind, that in order to get to that place, there had to be so much frustration and so much anger and anxiety that Charles gone through. And actually that was made so easy because every time I tried to have a conversation like I did in season 3 with Olivia, I get shut down. It's like there's about, I think there's like three scenes where Diana's able to explain everything that she's experiencing. Yeah. And they listen and they say, well, you know, we have to give it another go. Every time Charles goes in to speak with mum and dad and goes, right, this is a problem, it doesn't happen. And so that I always felt like that was made easier, even in that last scene when, as Olivia said, she like stands him up and sends him out. I mean, he never really gets the chance to say, oh, I'm actually not very happy.
I've got another great relationship that I really want to talk about, because I think it's such an understated dynamic on the show, but it's such a powerful one between Prince Philip and Princess Diana. And early on, you know, they both struggle with being outsiders when it comes to learning their roles within the family. Philip eventually bends, and as we learn later, Diana breaks. And I love how the season's almost bookended by these brilliant scenes with you both. You know, you've got the stag, and then you also have the chat at Christmas where he goes up to her room to have that conversation. And it's just, I wanted to get from both of you to talk about what you saw as this bond between the two of them and how you found that and how you kind of played with that throughout the season, you know, from these 2 points and in between it.
I was fascinated by their relationship, but I guess their friendship. I feel like they have a deep bond of sort of, at least until the end, the final moments in 10 at the Christmas party. I feel like they have a very shared understanding of what it is to be an outsider coming into the firm. Yeah, and I enjoyed all our scenes. I felt like there was a lot of sort of allyship there, which also means that at the end, when Philip pulls her up on her behavior, or I guess has that talk to her, it makes it more impactful because of the alliance that they've sort of found to begin with. Yeah, I really believed the relationship. I really, you know, it was such a believable relationship. He could almost see, I guess, his own experiences and what she was going through. Tobias, what about for you?
He's incredibly charmed by her, I think, and really beguiled by her, and I think that really impairs his judgment when it comes to offering advice to his son. And I think he definitely is complicit in what turned out to be a very poor decision. And I think he allowed his own sort of feelings for this young woman to get in the way of the business of finding someone who could meaningfully support Charles. And he sort of, he stretches it, he bullies, he pushes, he, you know, doesn't offer the parental guidance, I think. And so there's an interesting kind of like, he misses it. And I think at the end, he starts to see, you know, he gets a sudden flash in that scene at the end. He realizes that she is not all that she seems, and that there's a lot of, you know, there's destruction buried in her. And so that feels very, you know, that's a beautiful arc over the season.
And this is where there may be a few tears. So I hope you've all got Kleenex at the ready. But I wanted to but I just wanted to, you know, this is kind of goodbye in a way, you know, to these roles that you've played over 2 seasons, and they've been incredibly powerful and emotional for us to watch, and so entertaining as well. But what are you gonna miss most about that time on set with each other? And you know, I know that you're not going to miss Helena's playlists in the makeup truck for a start. I've heard from many people. But what is it you're going to miss most, do you think, about turning up on set with each other?
Well, as a slight outsider to it, and you know, having such an extraordinary experience dipping into something that was already established, and feeling so welcome and made to be a part of, even just doing 6 episodes in 1 season, by the end, or even, you know, very early on of that, in that process, you know, we'd already started making plans for what we were going to do later on in the year to get together to celebrate and to, you know, watch the episodes all together. And we had this big plan where we were going to be staying out at the hotel together and using the cinema room to watch the episode, you know. And so and that never got to happen because of the lockdown, and a lot of us never got to actually properly say goodbye to each other. So, you know, a lot of these Zoom interviews for awards have been the only times. I mean, we have a WhatsApp group that we, you know, keep track of each other on, but other than that, this is when we see each other. And so on the one hand, it feels like we said goodbye in a strange way a long time ago, but on the other hand, it feels like we're owed one.
We are owed a big one.
We're due a massive party.
Yeah.
Peter, that is over to you. I've got one last thing I want to ask Peter, because this season 4 in particular, I think because we're in an era where people remember and they know, and it's their lifetime, and, you know, it continues to captivate new audiences as well with each season. And this is the last time that you're going to see this cast on screen playing the characters together that you wrote. What do you hope will be the legacy of this chapter of The Crown of season 4? I
say this with no disrespect either to Tobias or Josh, but it did feel like a season of mega women. It did. When I looked back on it, when I watched it, and we were watching the whole season together, and I was like, I don't know how it had escaped my notice, the degree to which it was such a female season, and how powerful those three women, you know, Thatcher, Diana, and the Queen, these absolutely totemic women in British cultural life, so that it felt like that, and it felt like probably, as you said, Edith, the entry point into the show, I think, for a much younger audience that connect with Diana. And we've seen this. Netflix has shared data with me that people have come in for season 4 and then in great numbers gone back and started 1, 2, and 3. There are people of 20 and under who don't even remember Diana, and for them the entry point is William and Harry, and maybe that'll bring a whole new audience as we go forward into seasons 5 and 6. But I think I had a feeling that this season, I'm thrilled that it's been received the way that it has, but I think I had a feeling about it even when we were writing it, and certainly in the first rehearsals and the first read-throughs, I had a feeling that this season would punch through in a very particular way, and it has done that. And like I say again, of course, Philip and Charles were pivotal characters, but there's something about the you couldn't make up the chemical mix that is Thatcher, the Queen, and Princess Diana, and such strong characters, and so we were privileged to be able to write people like that.
We'll let you get back to writing seasons 5 and 6, Peter. Thank you all so much for your time today. I've been lucky to get to chat to you all about this fantastic show and your brilliant performances, and I wish you all the best of luck with the upcoming awards as well. And thank you so much for your time, and thanks to everybody for joining us today for Netflix FYC virtual panel, to the cast and creators of the fabulous The Crown. Take care and stay safe, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Edith.
Bye,
guys.